Hi, it's Tuesday, April 29th, and we're tracking potential for development in the West Pacific this week. We're getting to that time of year now where the southern hemisphere begins to die down activity wise, and the northern hemisphere begins to wake up with usually our first few storms in the northern hemisphere of the year starting off in May. Now, this week, the focus is going to be in the West Pacific as we have a lot of convection here. You can see blossoming near the equator southeast of the Philippines. Over the next several days, this is going to slowly migrate northwards, and we could see some development from this system as it comes further north, and we could see some impacts to the Philippines as early as late week or this weekend from this system. Now, if we look at the broad scale view of the system, it is very disorganized and is far from becoming a tropical cyclone. And it's clear that this is going to be a long and drawn out development time frame on this system. You can see we have a large area of spin with a bunch of disorganized convection firing along this. And this is a large area of troughiness or low pressure extending over quite a distance. And this is going to lead to quite a bit of uncertainty over the next few days. There's a lot of uncertainty already been in the model guidance, and this will continue really until we get an informed area of low pressure out of this. Now, if we look at a closer view of this, you might be able to pick out an area of low pressure that might be sitting underneath the clouds. We kind of get a sense of some spin here southwest of Palau. But this low may not end up being the dominant low. Oftentimes what happens in these troughs is that you'll have lows like this that develop and they can die out because another low may form and become dominant, and it becomes an endless battle until you eventually get something that develops and becomes a more dominant low, especially as the system just sits here, as it is going to be sitting here kind of incubating, if you will, for the next several days. We're going to see a lot of transformation with this system as a whole. Now, eventually, as we get towards the latter half of the week, we're going to begin to see this move towards the north. And the reason for that is because we have troughiness across Eastern Asia, which is going to help break down the area of high pressure that's keeping this system kind of in an incubating state near the equator. You can see right now we have a large area of high pressure, highlighted by the clockwise turning in the wind barbs, kind of keeping the system kind of trapped down here near the equator. But you can see all these areas of low pressure coming into South Korea and Japan. You can see there's one by Thursday. This is going to be one of two that digs in and begins to set a western edge on this bridge. You can see it happening even on this, where we have increasing southerly flow on the western flank of this ridge. And once we get that secondary trough kind of reinforcing the flow here, it's really going to reinforce the western edge of this ridge, and whatever has been formed out of the area of low pressure that's been incubating for the past week is going to begin to move towards the north. And exactly where the system is going to play a large role in exactly what kind of impacts we see in this, and what kind of potential intensification we could see out of the system as it lifts north and gains latitude. You can see this uncertainty if we look at the GFS and European ensembles, comparing them. This is the GFS ensemble showing you every member, which shows about 31 members in the GFS ensemble, showing you 31 different types of tracks that the system could take in the future. And you can see the GFS alone already has a very widespread uncertainty range. We have some tracks that are off east here, closer to the Mariana Islands, and we have some here west impacting the Philippines. And this partially has to do with the formation of the low within this. Again, if we look at the large scale view, we have this very large area of troughiness. One thing a lot of these models are doing is they're trying to pick a single point and then go off of that single point and then make a forecast off of that. That's a very hard thing to do and very bad thing to do when you have a large area like this, because realistically, you could have an area of low pressure, like I kind of described at the beginning, that forms here, or forms here, or forms here, and which one becomes dominant, that's impossible to tell you at this range. And what you're seeing in this GFS ensemble run is that some members are seeing this eastern part become more dominant, and that leads to these tracks further east. And then there's some that sees this more western part become dominant. That's where you get those more western tracks. And this is not just all the uncertainty that we have. If we look at the European model, we'll see a completely different story, where a lot of these members are off towards the west, on this western lobe of the trough, and these end up coming into the South China Sea and becoming a stronger system. And so we have this uncertainty range that is quite large, stretching from, say, China and Vietnam all the way to the Mariana Islands. And this is going to be a common trend that we see in models and has been for the past several days until we actually see where a system has formed within this trough. Once we get past that point, then we can really begin to answer questions on exactly where the system is going to go. Now, usually what happens in these cases is you get something in the middle. You can kind of see this in the GFS deterministic run, where it forms a system on the more the western end, and we have the system coming east of the Philippines. You will note that the GFS also develops this eastern system. I think this is a bit more unrealistic. I think we're more likely to get one system out of this instead of two distinct systems. I think the GFS is just being a little aggressive on this. But you could see it kind of taking the middle ground in a deterministic run, where we have an area of low pressure forming into a TC east of the Philippines that may be close enough to bring some impacts. And importantly, as this ridge begins to get its western edge set, this trough is also moving pretty quickly. So what we're going to see on this is that this trough moves out and then we see the ridge begin to build in. And if we do indeed have a system like this, like the GFS is showing, coming just east of the Philippines, as this ridge noses in back to the west, it may force the system back towards the west and could get the system uncomfortably close to the Philippines. And that would be a more concern for a, say, stronger system, maybe something closer to a typhoon coming into the central Philippines. Now, there's a lot of range here. If the system does just track west and bury itself over the Philippines, we may not get a system at all. And that could just be a weak area of low pressure that brings a lot of rainfall. But there is, some potential here that we see some kind of a tropical system come north here and impact the Philippines. And exactly where it tracks, exactly how much intensification we get, unsure on that, and we're not going to know for several days. One thing we do know is the pattern is going to be favorable for it, so we do need to watch this in the Philippines. If it does indeed stay east, we could see some intensification, and again, it could get close here to the landmass. Though regardless of that, this is going to bring a lot of tropical moisture up with it. You can see all this convection blowing up here in response to all that moisture. And translate this over the Philippines, and you've got a large area of potential flooding issues that we could have over the Philippines. So it's certainly something to monitor, even if we don't get tropical development out of this. But if we do, it could certainly be a reminder that we're going into the more active typhoon season months, and we are getting closer to the summer months, which typically sees an uptick in typhoon activity in the West Pacific. But that's all that I've got for today. I'll have more videos as necessary with the system as it does develop throughout the week. But again, in the Philippines, my best advice right now is just monitor it. Nothing imminent right now, and we'll see how it goes over the next several days. And we'll see if we actually get a system developing out of this. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.